morning, everybody. Welcome to another rockin' and rollin' episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast. I am Monster. Joining me is Danger. Say hello, Danger.
Hello, Danger.
Today, we are continuing our series on very important records from 1997, going with Sugar Ray's Floored, which came out June 24th, 1997. Danger, how do you feel about Sugar Ray and this album in particular? Do you have any personal connection to these guys?
All right. So I know last week I said that this is a very underrated Sugar Ray album.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm going to stick with. This is an underrated Sugar Ray album, but it's still a Sugar Ray album. Yep.
That's a very good description.
Yes. So I have no personal attachment to Sugar Ray in any way whatsoever. Nothing about Sugar Ray has ever jumped out at me. This album was a very unexpected, hard-driven album. Now, I had heard this before. It's been some number of years since I've actually listened to this, but I've always kind of thought this is an underrated Sugar Ray album. And I'll talk about this several times. Fly is not representative of this album at all.
Nope.
And I've got theories as to why the sound changed and all, but I have no history with Sugar Ray at all, aside from hitting next or turning off the radio or whatever it may be.
So I kind of brought this up on the last episode, and I'm actually wearing the tour shirt from 1997. Not the exact one, because that one obviously too old. But
are those amp tubes with guys sitting on top?
Transistor.
Okay.
Transistor.
Yeah.
This was 311's Transistor tour.
I was going to ask, is that a 311 shirt, because that fits the motif they had? Yeah. Okay.
So in 1997, I would have been 11 or 12, and I saw my first big real concert. My brother took me to see 311. And the opening acts were Incubus and Sugar Ray. And in 1997, Sugar Ray only had 2 records out, Lemonade and Brownies, which came out in 95, and then Floored, which came out that year.
Lemonade and Brownies is objectively not a bad album. It's not a great album, but it's not a bad album, especially for a band's first, outing.
Now, what I can't remember is if I got Floored before or after I saw them, but I did get it at Kmart and had the edited version, which was, and we'll get into it, but there's not a lot of bad language on this album, but when it comes pretty frequently. And it's funny, the stuff Kmart edited and did not edit, but we'll get there.
You're right. The curse words and stuff are not frequent, but when they are present, they go for gold.
So just to give a little bit of backstory into the band, they were formed in Newport Beach, California, which is Orange County, actually all the way back in 1986. But they had a different name for a while. Do you know what their name was?
I don't.
They were called the Shrinky Dinks.
I think I did.
And when you listen to Lemonade and Brownies, which came out in 95, you can hear a little bit more of the funk metal, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rage Against the Machine vibe. A lot of that is still present on Floored, but it's a little more rough around the edges on Lemonade and Brownies. Floored was kind of the album that put Sugar Ray on the map. You alluded to it earlier because of the song Fly. Which not a single track on this record sounds like that song other than that song.
Well, okay, so to expand on what you just said, there is another track that sounds like Fly, and that's the other version of Fly.
Fair enough. But what I found funny, hindsight 2020, was when that album came out, that song was a huge hit. It was on alternative radio. It was on pop radio.
It was on everything.
TV, yeah.
It was on Kmart's radio in their store.
And most critics wrote them off as a one-hit wonder because nothing else on the album sounded like that song. So kind of when they released their next album in 99, 1459 was a joke about their 15 minutes of fame. And pretty much every song on it sounds like Fly.
So I did go and listen to it because I've never actually listened to 1459. And
I like it.
And the thing about it is it's much more polished of an album. And I would say 2/3 of it sound like Fly or sound like a band that wrote Fly, basically.
Yeah.
The other third of it sounds like beachy punk music.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And, you know, I can't tell you the exact interview or exact time that it came up, but I've heard several times Mark McGrath and some of the other guys basically say, look, in the late 80s, early 90s, we were a bunch of angry kids. So we wrote angry music and we liked to scream and yell and jump up and down. And then we got older and we started to mellow out. And so our music reflected that and we wanted to do more mellow tunes. Coincidentally, the mellow tunes is what put them on the map and made them rich, famous rock stars. So, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? But at the end of the day, they released 2 really heavy records and then a whole bunch of really chill, you know, grooving, beachy records. And honestly, my personality, I'm cool with both. And I think, you know, depending on my mood, Floored is probably my favorite Sugar Ray record, but that's not to say I haven't listened to every subsequent record as well and enjoyed a lot of those as well.
My theory on the change of things. Now, I do have this further down in my notes when we actually come across the track Fly. Baby, I just wanna fly. I come burning out the sky up so high. Put your arms around me, baby. Put your arms around me, baby. I do know that Mark McGrath stormed out of the studio several times in protest of putting Fly on the album. And that was something I'd actually read before we decided to take on this album today. And my thought on the whole thing is seeing where Mark McGrath is now, knowing that I don't know, is he still on Entertainment Tonight? I
was going to say, I don't know exactly, but I know he was like on game shows and talk shows. He became just a pop culture person for a while.
Now, I stick to Henry Rollins' thing about selling out, which is to do something for money but not change your sound is not selling out. The goal of every musician, every writer, every artist is to make it big and make a career off of their product, whatever it may be. If a band makes it big and doesn't change their sound, they didn't sell out. They just rode the wave and happened to take that chance. I think that because they did change their sound, I don't want to say they sold out, but they definitely bought in. Let's put it that way. And I think that Mark McGrath may have stormed out of the recording studio, you know, put his foot down in protest and said, I don't want to record Fly, especially 2 versions of it on our album that is an angry beach music. And okay, the description I put down is, if Red Hot Chili Peppers tried the hip-hop reggae funk of 311, the punk of whenever, and trying to harness the anger of a 13-year-old's copy of Korn's first CD, and they tried to make something that could be played at a beach music or a beach party. That's my overall assessment of this album. Or maybe they were big fans of Sprung Monkey. You remember Sprung Monkey?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even though Mr. Funny Face was, I think, their breakout album, if you could say breakout, came out in 98, which I had that one. So
this slots in well with that 90s era, like Sprung Monkey, The Flies, you know, kind of teeters the line between rap rock. And to me, what I heard a lot of felt like there was still a lot of that 90s grunge in the riffs, but more of that snot mentality. I don't know, that might be a reference a lot of people won't get, but Snot was a band around this time. They only did one album. Their vocalist Lynn Strait died before they really take off, but they were on one or two of the Ozfests back in the 90s and were blowing everybody out of the water because they were just bonkers. And they had that rap metal sound, but a lot of punk in there too, real aggressive, like rap rock. And matter of fact, Mark McGrath sings on one of the songs on Lynn Strait's tribute album because obviously Snot was a big influence on old school Sugar Ray.
So I think
everything you said is right. All of those elements are in there.
Oh God, yeah. So I think that, after the rest of the band and maybe the producers and all, they said, you're going to put Fly on the album. The record label said, you're going to put Fly on the album. I think Mark McGrath and the rest of the band got bit by the success bug, and they were like, you know what? This is a sound that works better for money and for paying rent. And so they just went that route. And so did they buy in? Did they sell out? Or did they just do it to make money to be able to survive and still make music? I don't know. That's not.
I think the answer is yes.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. But regardless, this album was a struggle for me to listen to in my current state. It was. I'm going to need you to strongly defend this album in this conversation. At 44 minutes, it's a struggle. I wish it was 14:59 like their next album. I wish it was that short. But that's the thing about this is that there is a few spots that I really genuinely enjoy on this album. And there's some good just punk guitar that should have been more of a shining, moment, more of something that was given room to breathe and run. And that is, and where that goes away, I want it to come back. But this album shows that Sugar Ray can rip off other artists.
Okay, so I have a really, not to pat myself on the back, but I like how I wrote my closing thoughts. Obviously, I'll save them, but I'll address some of your concerns as we go.
That's fine. Let's do it. But I did want to say something before we jump into the album that I thought was interesting. So there's no doubt that Sublime is an influence on Sugar Ray. There's no doubt. It's in there. That's the beach side of what they're doing. And Floored shares a producer with Sublime, their self-titled album, David Kahne. Kahne? Kahn? I don't know.
Sure.
And Mark McGrath and Bradley Newell were first cousins.
That I did not know.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting little tidbit.
So I don't think, not to show my hand too early, I don't think this is an album that we need to go real deep into song by song.
Well, I don't think it's a song by song, but I do want to hear why this album means so much to you. Is it a nostalgia thing? Is it just that you genuinely love this album? I want you to tell me. I'm interested to hear what you got on this one.
So the first three songs, RPM, Breathe, Anyone. All three of these songs share a little bit of sonic space. They all have a little bit of a heavy grungy guitar with real basic lyrics, usually about just, I do like the lyrics of Anyone because it is kind of a positive message. It's saying, anyone can do it if you put your mind to it, kind of thing. And I also like the way the album kicks off, very Girls, Girls, Girls by Motley Crue with the engine rev with the guitar swell. It's corny as all get out, but it's still fun.
I did think that their play on the engine revving against the guitar, I did think that was a good little touch. I did like that as a creative move.
So, but real quickly, within those first 3 songs, you've got the punk, you've got the nu metal, you've got the grunge, and let's not take away that they also have a DJ in the band. So even though they have these parts that are super grungy sounding, like I don't want to say they sound like Alice in Chains, but they have sort of the same. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's mixed similarly. Like I remembered this being a heavier album than when I went back and listened to it. Like that. The chugs at the beginning of RPM, Breathe, like those are heavy, but they're not as over like low end heavy like you hear on a Korn record or on a Limp Bizkit record.
So I don't think that these guys, if you can picture in your mind what Korn does live, where they are hunched over, the guitars are freely hanging, and I don't see them doing this on stage. I don't see them doing it as part of their performance. And to be honest, RPM objectively is a decent song. It is.
Yeah.
You know, there are elements of it that I do like. I don't think it all works extremely well together, but it is an assault of the guitar. I mean, the fact that they use race engine samples in it, I think is a fun thing. And like I said, the dichotomy, the juxtaposition, whatever you want to, the pairing of the engine with the guitar, that was an interesting little thing to hear for me. And this album, or that song specifically, yes, they do have a DJ in the band. RPM is the song that the DJ swings by the local record store and goes to the dollar bin and picks up whatever album, because that's where the dollar store bin goes to die in live performances, because he scratches the album that much in the song. I don't think it's a bad move.
Yeah.
I don't think it's needed to the point that they do it. That first song shows that they can handle their aggression well, and they can aim their aggression, and that's cool. Breathe, I felt like at Breathe, after RPM, I needed to breathe myself. I needed a breath. It was just an onslaught. And don't get me wrong, you know that I like my metal. You know I like my heavy stuff. But it was just, it felt like a second RPM. It felt like a sequel to it. And anyone, I didn't even put notes on anyone, because anyone felt like more of that. And it was just, at a certain point, give me a minute. Give me a change. Give me
so
anyone
does change sonically, because the verses are just kind of this walking bass. It does start with almost like a revving engine again, but it does the actual verses and stuff. It's a little bit more mellow, but that's when track 4, Fly.
All around the world, statues crumble for me. Who knows how long I've loved you? Imagine everyone I know's been so good to me.
Comes in. And
not just any Fly, the Fly featuring Supercat.
Which this was a thing back in the day where it was either white guys trying to do a dance hall voice, or it was you just got the dance hall guy on your white guy song. No Doubt did it. Sure, a lot of other bands did it too. And at the time, I remember liking, not to bury the lead here, but the last track on the album is also Fly, just without the dance hall voice.
Right.
And at the time, I liked the Sugar Ray only version. Now, I think, especially when you listen to the album as a whole, that song, Fly without the extra vocals, sounds a little bit sparse.
It does.
And so I get why it's in there. And this was a huge hit.
And I have to ask
1997.
Sorry.
That was, I was just going to say 1997. 95 to 99, you had a lot of songs like this. A lot of the bands that you mentioned earlier, Sublime, 311, No Doubt, this is when they were kind of at their peak.
So, does the other version of Fly sound sparse and empty because this other version is there and you were given this first? Or,
yeah.
Right. So,
yeah.
If you never heard this one, would it be okay? Would it have been the hit that it was?
I personally think probably, because you still got that cool little thin guitar. You've got the big "I just want to fly" kind of like hook that gets stuck in your head. The one thing that does piss me off is that this song still gets played on the radio today.
Absolutely.
You hear it all the time. But they take out the bridge. And the bridge is the only part that connects it to this album. It's not super heavy, but it just kicks into a little bit of a groove, and it's got some distorted guitar in there, and it's not so heavy that it shouldn't be on the radio. Like, I don't understand why they have to take it out.
No, there's heavier stuff on the radio, but maybe not the stations that play Fly. So, but also at the same time, would it be in there if it wasn't the version with Supercat that gets played? It's right. There's a lot of the would it be if it wasn't this sort of thing with this. And the thing about Fly is it objectively is not a terrible song. It's not a great song. It's a radio hit song. It's what it is. But it's also been played 54,682,357 times in my life, and I don't ever want to hear it again. And yes, I put down that number. I don't ever want to hear it again.
I'm with you on that one. And I think it's the song that put them on the map. It's the song that got them where they are today, for better or for worse. It's the song that made this album go double platinum. There's not another song on this record that could have put this at a double platinum status.
There is. It's Fly.
Yeah, it comes at the end.
Because they put that song in here twice, I am going to make fun of it. I'm going to.
And a weird move, but you have to imagine that is a label move. Like, that is
absolutely
definitely not
100%. This song was a label move.
Now, for me, where the album really shines is songs like track 5, Speed Home California.
When I want to get back to the arms of you, want to get back, I gotta get back to mine. Speed home California, Speed home California, Speed home California, Speed home California. Oh, yeah.
This is the kind of stuff, you hear a lot of this on Lemonade and Brownies. This is where I think that California rock and roll punk rock sound is where Sugar Ray was really in their sweet spot.
So I don't really have much of a problem with Speed Home California. It was much faster paced following Fly, but then I had to remember that Fly does not represent the rest of the album. So it's much faster paced. And this to me sounds like, I don't know, just after Hillel died and Chili Peppers, and they went, and if they did like a surf punk thing. And
yeah, I can hear
that's what I feel like it is. I was thrown off by, and there's kind of a back and forth with, I was kind of thrown off in when he says California in the chorus, he kind of puts a country twang on it, which made me wonder where he was from. And he's actually from Hartford, Connecticut. He moved to Newport Beach when he was 8. So he's from Newport Beach. That's where you get all your stuff at that point. Anyway, but also at the same time, I think that this album actually shows that Sugar Ray has a great sense of humor.
Okay, so this is a good time to bring this up. So the next song, High Anxiety.
Yep.
So at this point, we're about halfway through the record, and you've heard some angry riffs, you've heard some more playful stuff, you've heard Fly, and then High Anxiety is just this it's a funky beat with Mark McGrath talking on top of it. So at this point, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. For as good looking as he is, Mark McGrath is not a great singer. But what he lacks in talent, he makes up for in charisma and delivery. I think his having fun is infectious. High Anxiety is just a weird little thing. I feel like it could have been shorter and been fine. It feels more like an interlude that they were like, we like it too much to stop playing it, so we're going to make it a full song. And Mark was like, I'm not writing lyrics, so here's what you're getting.
So you're going to put in a lot of samples of other things.
Yes, exactly. So after High Anxiety, when you get to the back half, I think is when we're having fun again. And I think that this album captures a couple of things really well, and that's driving fast, partying, drinking, just having a good time. And so once you get past High Anxiety, you've got Tap, Twist, Snap. Which is just about drinking beer. That's talking about, that's what Tap, Twist, Snap is opening beers.
So Tap, Twist, Snap sounds like a beach party friendly version of the Misfits.
Yep, I get that exactly. It's very similar in vibe to Sweet Home California. It's got a little bit of punk, got a little bit of grunge, a little 80s metal, and then lyrically it's just about having a good old time. And then American Pig starts. And I remember when I was a kid, this one hit me like a ton of bricks because it starts with a sample of a guy saying, I know you're going to dig this. Yeah. And then just kicks into this just massive sounding guitar, real single note, John, 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 John. But like I said earlier, hindsight being what it is, all this new music that's come out in the past couple of years, it's not as heavy as I remembered it being.
It's not a super heavy song. I think this may be the heaviest song on the album, but it's not a super heavy song. It does, the guitars definitely are on the heavier side of things.
Yeah.
That's undeniable. This sounds like they were going for Faith No More to me. That's what I got out of it. And the song is it's a good song. It's a fine song, but the chorus ruins it every time. The put your foot in your mouth, but the hole's too big. You talk some shit, I'll make your eyes burn. If you don't quit, time for a hard learn. So, whereas on number 5...
Wait. What was the last line? Time for a what?
For a hard learn.
Are we sure?
I don't know. The lyrics, the chorus always threw me off. And so I was like, okay, I got to go see what it says. And there are quite a few points on this album where I checked out.
I honestly thought, and you're probably right, I honestly thought he was saying time for a hernia.
But the hole is too big. You talk more shit. Well, make your eyes burn. If you don't quit, yeah. Time for a hernia.
No, I mean, he may say time for a hernia. It's obvious they have a good sense of humor, so he may say hernia, but I don't recall hernia. I don't remember hernia, but yeah. Number 5, High Anxiety.
Did you not? Did you or did you not? You goddamn right I did!
It's a sample heavy song, and I feel like it was where I feel like 5 is a filler song. At best, it was
6?
Well, no, 5, the High Anxiety. I feel like it was a filler song.
I thought Speed Home was 5. I don't know why.
No, sorry. 5 is Speed Home. Sorry, 6 is High Anxiety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was off there. I feel like High Anxiety was a filler song, and it was it should have been an interlude. And I think you're right. Mark McGrath probably said, "I'm not write any more lyrics. And the rest of the band was like, hey, we got this other song that we've been working on. It's not done yet. Let's put these together and see how it works. And then American Pig, number 8, was just kind of them going, I think we finished the song that we were working on. And then Mark McGrath was like, hey, I've been listening to a lot of Faith No More lately. Epic's a great song. And he came in, and then we got American Pig.
So then, to your point about the sense of humor, then the next 2 songs are, again, just I'm having a good time at this point. So number 9.
No, that's fine. I get that.
So number 9, Stand and Deliver. Is actually an Adam Ant cover song.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's unfamiliar with Adam Ant, just imagine a slightly goofier David Bowie. Very theatrical,
very androgynous.
Yes, musically they do have their differences, but that's the best comparison I can come up with. I've heard other bands cover this song, but you can tell again, Mark McGrath, again, not a great singer, but what he's doing vocally fits the vibe of the song, and it's just silly. It's just meant to be silly. I like it. It's fun. It's simple. I like it.
So I had actually heard this before because I kind of like Adam and the Ants, and the way I would put it is, the way I would describe Adam Ant is David Bowie, but without the funding. And yeah, you know, less theatric, having to do his own makeup and whatnot. Anyway, so when I first listened through to this album for our purposes, I forgot this was here.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that Adam Ant and Marco Perrone, who was also in Adam and the Ants, were on this song. And I thought that was strange when I learned it, that they're on a cover of their own song. But then it makes sense why it's so similar to Adam and the Ants version. Yeah. They did nothing to change their cover. They did nothing to change this cover for this album. They did nothing to make it their own. But I'm going to kind of disagree with what you were saying, that Mark McGrath can't sing. I think Mark McGrath is at his best as a singer, but I still don't think he can sing.
Well, I think that 1997 was a very long time ago. So I don't remember much from that concert.
Historically, but for us, yeah.
But what I do remember of Sugar Ray's performance was Mark was the definition of a frontman. He was energetic. He was charismatic. He interacted with the crowd. I remember him kind of joking around with the security guards right up front, and he was just a show within himself. And I think that the theatrical delivery and nature of Stand and Deliver matches his personality very well. And then Cash. Cash! Which is another one of my favorites on the album, because it is just 2 minutes of super fast, stupid lyrics about robbing a bank, and it's just simple and fun.
It's a simple punk song with a rockabilly guitar solo. It's a straightforward song.
It's fun.
And Sugar Ray, I don't even know who Sugar Ray was, or if Sugar Ray is something for something. I don't know anything behind.
Sugar Ray Leonard, the boxer.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. But Sugar Ray is Mark McGrath. He's a frontman that took over in personality, and got a job on Entertainment Tonight with AC Slater.
He is the 90s alternative equivalent to like a Nick Lachey.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, Cash is just a fun, quick punk song with a rockabilly guitar solo. It is probably the strongest song on the album, in my opinion.
So then you got Invisible. Right Direction.
Of your rejection, put yourself in the right direction. Everybody knows somebody who's a nobody. Come on, help me out. Everybody knows somebody who's a nobody. Come on, help me out. Everybody knows somebody.
And another version of Fly.
What you want? Put your arms around me, baby. Put your arms around me, baby. I just wanna fly. What you want? What you try?
You could just leave these off. You could have a 10-song album and I would be okay with it.
So I have no notes on Right Direction. I had checked out at that point. That song just did not click for me at all. Invisible. The notes I put are why did they think this was a good idea for the album? Excuse me. There's a second note on there. Why did they think this song was done?
So I like Right Direction more than I like Invisible, but neither one of these are great songs. And that all kind of plays into my closing statements that I'm going to say here in a minute. But I really feel like on this record, Sugar Ray is at their best on songs like RPM, Speed Home California, Cash, Tap, Twist, Snap. These songs that are obviously very silly. They've got car noises. They're singing about drinking beer. Like, I think that's the vibe. These other songs like Right Direction and Anyone and Invisible are just the filler tracks to get what they want in there.
Yep. So the notes I have on Fly to close the album, it's the second time around. We don't need this song a second time on this album. Pop lovers who bought it for Fly got hit with what the hell, while the people who would have appealed to at the time probably wouldn't want to be caught buying the record. Because I knew plenty of people who probably really liked Fly, but never said I don't know anybody that said they liked Fly. It's kind of like Nickelback. I don't know anybody that likes Nickelback, but yet they keep selling tickets. They keep selling albums.
I feel like there is a certain genre of bands. I hesitate to use the term guilty pleasure, but it's funny the amount of people that like to shit on bands like Nickelback and Creed and even Sugar Ray to an extent. But they still get millions of plays on Spotify and
Absolutely.
Apple Music. They still sell out places when they go play. So obviously it's just a matter of people listening to it, and for whatever reason, they don't want to admit it. I've never had a guilty pleasure. I've listened to whatever I've wanted for years, even if it's not cool. 9 times out of 10, what I like is not cool. So I've got no
you're right.
No. There's very little about me that's cool. So I have no shame in saying that, yeah, I like Nickelback.
You know what? You and I will identify, and there's nothing about us that's cool, but for some reason we like each other and we get along. So, but
it's the fact that neither one of us are cool. It's like they, just gravitate towards one another.
Yeah, like we probably would have
Birds
sat
of a feather flock together.
We probably would have sat at the same table in high school in the cafeteria.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
So, actually, I'm kind of with you on I don't have guilty pleasures because I've gotten to the point to where this is what I like. This is what I like. When I was younger and I was trying to be cooler, it was, no, we're not going to talk about that ever with anybody because I'm not going to admit that I like that. No, but yeah, I like it. It's fine, whatever. But no, I don't like Nickelback.
And to your point, so we've talked about this 90s era stuff before. And the reason this album worked for me is because I was listening to bands like 311 and No Doubt and Chili Peppers that were mixing rock and funk and ska and punk and stuff. So when I heard the song Fly and then heard songs like RPM and Speed Home California, cool. Like all that slots together for me. To your point, someone that's listening to the top 40 station hears Fly and wants an album that sounds like Fly, it was going to be a couple years before they got that. I could see it being very jarring. You're expecting songs similar to Fly and RPM literally drives over you when it starts.
So I did find a thing. It's actually off of their Wikipedia page, but Billboard claimed in September 1997 that the song "Fly" was not representative of the rest of the album, saying, "While the band has undoubtedly become tied to the track due to its widespread coverage, it is only one facet of Sugar Ray's musical persona." And so, to what you were just saying, yes, 100%, they were doing all these different things. And I do think it was a very, very common thing amongst the more popular bands of the mid 90s. I would say the 94 to 97, 98 period, like Search of Time, it was a fairly common thing to hear where bands were mixing that. And I think it came back a little bit later on, but a little bit more niche, if you will, in just a few select people. But it was more of those people that actually came from ones that were in the early 90s, like Gwen Stefani did a good job of mixing it all, and she came out of No Doubt. Of course, everybody knows that. So,
one more general thought about 90s music for a second, not to get way off topic.
This is a 90s album. It's not off topic, man.
I often see these retrospectives about music in the 90s, and a couple of headlines are usually what you see. It's either about grunge, it's either about the start of West Coast gangster hip hop, or it's the start of nu metal. But what always gets lost in the shuffle, and I don't know what you call it. I've used the term happy alternative. I've college alternative. Like, I don't know what you want to call it, but 311, No Doubt, Sugar Ray, Sublime, Chili Peppers. Like, there's this whole other genre that was happening at this time that these bands, what's really interesting about these bands is not all of them, but a lot of them have stood the test of time better than some of the big names out of those other categories. And
so this album, what I could find, the styles of music that it actually combines: heavy metal, funk, reggae, pop, ska, punk, and hip hop. Okay. And so all of the bands that you were just talking about, yes, they do that very same thing. They mix all of those same genres of music. And I think one of the things about them is a lot of them haven't stood the test of time as much as they have beat the clock. And they've just lasted longer. They just didn't stop doing what they're doing. 311 will always have a big crowd at their concerts. I mean, I've been to quite a few of their concerts. They've always got a big crowd. They will always sell albums. They will always have this loyal following.
But they are definitely like a cult band.
Right. And that's the thing about all these bands is people who are fans of them are diehard fans of them, are big fans of them. And it's like, this is what I like. This is what I want to listen to. They'll have other bands they like and, ones they'll put on. They're not always going to put on the new whatever. They're not always going to put on an old whatever because you don't want to burn that album out. But I think one of the reasons why they stand the test of time is, again, not because they keep putting out good stuff, but because they keep putting out stuff. And they just haven't stopped trying. It's only a matter of time before a lot of these bands end up on what I've been calling the last gasp tour, which is where they start touring with other bands that they would have never toured with in their prime. But they're doing it because those other bands are still around. Those other musicians are still around. But I think we're going to actually see a change in the last gasp tour. But the bands like this that are mixing all these genres, they are like the class that came after the popular class in high school that was graduating, where it was like, they still got a lot going on, but they're not this other one that we're going to remember, but they've got a lot going on with themselves and should be paid attention to. And if you pay attention to them, you're going to get a lot out of it.
I also think a big part of it is the lyrical content, because when you think about grunge and you think about nu metal, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of depression, whereas 311, it's all about positivity and unity. Sugar Ray, it's all about drinking, it's all about partying. No Doubt was all about female empowerment. Like, that's why I gravitated towards that more than your Nirvanas and your Soundgardens and your Alice in Chains. I liked a lot of that too, but more on a musical level. Whereas lyrically, these bands worked for me more. But I think they weren't so bogged down in the anger that they were able to sustain better. Because even bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit, who were very angry and angsty, still had a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And that's, Korn with songs like Adidas, Limp Bizkit with all their goofy covers. Like, that was part of what kept them grounded, I think, not going too dark.
And Limp Bizkit's cover of Faith is one of the things that got them where they are.
Oh, sure. It was not uncommon at this time. Like, if you were a rock band in the early 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, you had to have a rocked up cover on your album. That was just like what you did. And for a lot of bands, that was a blessing. And for a lot of bands, that was a curse.
And
we'll get to some of those another time.
And for a band to have that cover on an album and it be an Adam and the Ants cover, that's a strange move. But you had
Adam Ant
but you had Adam Ant on there, right?
Would you imagine George Michael on Faith with Limp Bizkit? That would have been amazing.
I would have been entertained. Very much so. So, all right. I want to hear your closing assessment of this album.
Okay. Some albums elicit an emotional response that resonates with you for years to come. Songs with lyrics and musical moments that stick with you for a lifetime and grow with you. Some are deep and engaging that demand revisits to truly comprehend their complexities. Others may be simple, but after repeat listenings, the songs take on new shape and meaning for where you are in life. And then you have albums like Sugar Ray's 1997 album Floored, which is none of those things. There is no point to this album other than to have a good damn time. The lyrics never delve into anything more serious than drinking, partying, and driving really, really fast. While not devoid of creativity, this album is more focused on the listener being pumped up and having a good time than trying to make some deep, thought-provoking piece of art. This is the type of album you can play in the background at a frat party or loud as shit in your car going down the highway too fast. When you need a palate cleanser from listening to the types of albums I mentioned previously, this is a good choice. 1 to 10, I give it about a 6.5.
For some reason, I had a feeling you're going to put it about a 6, but
so to kind of clarify that, kind of cheeky description there, I like an album that I can turn on and not feel a bunch of shit. Okay. Sometimes I want an album that I can just put on and feel the groove and just have fun with it and not have to analyze it and critique it. And I mean, I know that's what we're doing with this show, but that was the point that I wanted to do this album for, is there is such a thing as a good album that is just there. It's just there. And it's there when you need something other than some deep heartstring pull in, whatever. There are times in my life where I want an album that just plays and I enjoy it, but I don't have to like, oh God, here's that song that makes me think about this catastrophic event or this traumatic thing, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Fly was the lead single on this album. This album needed it twice, but even with the hit song on there twice, that we all know this album couldn't take off. This album shows that they can scream and shout their way with no room for harmony, tempo change, or breakdowns within the same song, and I found it to be draining. Mark McGrath sounds a little out of place when attempting some of the album's more aggressive hip-hop parts, and is much more successful in actual singing parts, and he still can't do that. I found my experience full of obnoxious rock songs with no aim, and I enjoy the dirty basement of punk, and it still tires me as well. Sugar Ray created an album that I would have eaten up at one time, but only for a very short time. Fly does not represent this album and is nothing more than a well-placed trick by the band. I find joy in knowing that this single helped some kids convince their parents to buy the album, thus finding a new sound of music, and the look on the faces of those that went to buy this album expecting to get more of Fly and didn't. This is an underrated Sugar Ray album. In the end, it is still a Sugar Ray album. But this album does show that they have a good sense of humor. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this a 3.5.
That's awesome. No, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think you and I describe it very similarly, but just come down on it in a different light. This is not the kind of album that, like, I don't know exactly how to describe it other than what I said earlier, where it's just an album that exists and the songs are there. And this is the kind of song that, like, this is the kind of album that if I was having a bunch of friends coming over to play beer pong and just hang out, like, you could put this album on. There's nothing on here that's going to be like, ooh, God, what was that? Why is that?
Except for Fly.
Well, they would recognize that one.
And you would need to skip it twice because it's on there twice.
Anyway, but no, that was okay. Cool. I'm glad we did that.
Okay.
And again, so one more thing, just like I said, palate cleanser. We've been talking about some dense, heavy albums. I don't mean heavy and sonically necessarily, but like heavy topic. I mean, we just came off of OK Computer,
which
like
sonically is a heavy album. Let's just be honest. It is.
Which is why I thought something as silly and simple as this would be a nice juxtaposition before we go into the next dense, complicated album.
I will save all my feelings about that statement for next week. But
fair enough.
Next week, we're going to be talking the ongoing concepts, the places you will go. Yes. It's another mouthful. For some reason, I picked these bands that have these mouthful albums.
Yes.
So, anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast. Good morning, good evening, have a good day. Bye.
Later.